Welcome to Living Fully. Each episode is a chance to talk about mental health in a way that's simple, honest, and helpful. We'll share stories, tips, and tools to help you feel supported and feel your best. I'm your host, Catherine Hartig. Worrying is normal. It's a part of being human. Our brains are built to look ahead, plan, problem solve, and keep us safe. But sometimes that protective system can get a little overactive, and what starts as everyday worry can begin to feel more intense and harder to shut off. Today, I'm joined by counselor Carmen Sadoway, and we're talking about worry and anxiety, what makes them different, how anxiety shows up in the body, and how to respond with more compassion and curiosity instead of self-criticism. I am here with Carmen Sadoway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, it's been a little while since you've been on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Refresh our listeners' memories. Who are you? What do you do?
So Carmen Sadoway, I'm a staff counselor, Calgary Counseling Center. I've been here since 2021. Mm-hmm. I do counseling. I work with students. I work with staff.
Awesome. And we are talking about worry and anxiety, the difference between the two. Carmen, how would you kind of define that? Like what would be the difference between everyday worry and anxiety?
So I think a lot of times people use those terms interchangeably, but I would say that the word worry sort of isolates the more cognitive process, so the thinking part of anxiety.
Okay.
But the word anxiety kind of captures more than that. It's not just the cognitive or mental part, but it's the body, the physiological part of anxiety and the emotional experience of it. So it sort of encompasses more than just sort of the worry.
That's a great way to put it. Because, in my head, when I say that right off the bat, I think almost levels of intensity. Like worry is less intense than anxiety. But yeah, there is that difference of the physiological side of it. Yeah, what does normal worry look like? Because it is very human. It's a very normal thing to worry sometimes.
Yep, absolutely. So it's a great question. And you're absolutely correct. Anxiety and worry are just part of being human. We all experience these things from time to time. And it's just throughout the evolution of the human species, our brains have just developed to be able to do things to keep ourselves safe, whether that means safety in a physical life threat kind of way or in a social relational kind of way. Our brains have developed ways to keep ourselves safe and developed this amazing capacity to think into the future and also have access into the past through our memory. And so over a millennia of experience of just being humans, we have a lot of experience of safety seeking, problem solving, planning ahead of time to be safe. And all of these can involve the process of some worry and anxiety can function so that we can do those things well. And it's really amazing to have that capacity, that our brains as humans is sort of special. But it is also true that sometimes the smoke alarms in our brain can get tripped a little bit more easily than they should at times.
Yeah. Because I've heard counselors kind of, make the analogy like when anxiety comes up, it's like we're being chased by a lion, but that lion could be a difficult email we have to write or something. So it's not the most appropriate response.
Exactly. Yeah. The other metaphor that I use is like with the smoke alarm being tripped. It's like, okay, maybe there was a time in your life where there was an actual fire and the smoke alarm did have to go off. But now if it's being tripped because the toast is burning, right? Sometimes we need to sort of recalibrate the smoke alarm system so that we're sort of interpreting the threat in a more accurate way.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I like these analogies.
Good. And so sometimes the smoke alarms can get tripped. And sometimes we're just overdoing it with the worry, like we just kind of do more than is actually necessary or helpful. I think we've all been there sometimes.
Yeah.
And it can it can feel really awful to have like a high level of anxiety. No one likes the feelings and sensations involved with a feeling of dread or a panic attack or just feeling like hypervigilant all the time. It's like inherently a stressful experience. But I do often tell people that even if we could surgically remove anxiety and worry from your brain, we would never want to do that. Because it plays too important of a role in keeping us safe, helping us plan ahead, and functioning just effectively in life. Like we do really need it. So it's worry can be part of every human's experience. And it's just natural, right? We have things on our mind. We have to make plans for the future.
Yeah, they are
problems
really
to
useful.
solve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You briefly mentioned like panic attacks and you talked about how anxiety shows up in the body. Can you describe that a little more? Like what besides worried thoughts, what can someone potentially experience if they're dealing with anxiety?
Okay. So there's the worry as the cognitive process.
Yeah.
So the things that our mind, the thoughts and worries that our mind drums up for us in different situations. And that can elicit or bring on experience of anxiety. But when it's felt in that sort of physical or emotional way, yeah, there's just known things that the body does sort of in response to a triggering situation or just higher anxiety. So your pulse can get faster, your heart rate, your blood pressure can go up, muscles can tense, your gut can kind of squeeze, right? There's just like this tension, which sort of like prepares the body for that fight or flight that you mentioned before. Like it prepares the body for action. And so it's needed and it's helpful. And sometimes those sensations can be mild, like you get in some sort of stressful email and you feel like your stomach, right? But it's temporary, it's mild, it's not that big of a deal. But sometimes those sensations can also just get stronger, like in a panic attack, for instance, right? And then afterwards, if somebody's experienced like a higher level of like physiological arousal and anxiety, afterwards, sometimes people will say, oh, I just had a killer headache. Or I just felt this sense of fatigue afterwards. It really tired me out.
Yeah.
So it really can, it can really have like a physical, visceral kind of feeling that goes along with it.
Yeah, that fatigue, that really makes sense. Like I've definitely experienced that. If you're in a really anxious state, all those different body functions are happening. So that is going to tire you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of panic attacks, but I've also heard of anxiety attacks. And are those different? And what does that look like?
I mean, I think different people use these terms in different ways, just sort of like colloquially, but a panic attack.
And that's good to kind of, note that.
Yeah. When I think of a panic attack, I think about like a very intense surge of anxiety that can come with a really sort of like exaggerated fight-flight response. So like that's when their heart is pounding in their chest or having a hard time breathing. Sometimes because the body is just preparing itself to be in this fight or flight mode. Sometimes there can be other secondary effects like dizziness and just like a feeling of doom or dread that goes with it. So it's very intense. If you've had one, you know what it is. But they're not dangerous. They're actually more common than people realize. And I mean, if you're having those kinds of symptoms, like for sure, talk to a doctor, talk to a counselor. You want to get checked out. But it is just a known phenomenon that can sometimes go along with anxiety, not all the time. But it's short-lived. A panic attack is usually like anywhere from a couple minutes to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But it's not something that will last for 7 days if you're also sleeping in there and things like that. It's usually just this real intense spike and then it comes down again.
Well, I'm glad you addressed that because my follow-up question would have been like, is it dangerous? Because I'm sure like when you're in that scenario, your heart's racing, you're hyperventilating, that can feel pretty dangerous.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's scary. It's a dreadful experience and it does elicit this fear about the symptoms. I think when people have the right information about what a panic attack is and that it doesn't cause harm, and it can really kind of allay anxiety about the anxiety, essentially, right? To know like it's short-lived, it'll be okay, it's not causing damage to you. Yeah, I think sometimes just like learning about what it is can really help with those fears that come up about, because right, sometimes people start interpreting symptoms about anxiety in a way that might not be true or realistic or helpful. They might think because my heart is pounding, it means I'm having a heart attack. Yeah. That may not be true. So you need to be able to, for sure, get yourself checked out if some of this is happening. You talk to a doctor, but a lot of times people talk to the doctor. Doctor says everything's fine with your heart. Right. So it's more a matter of kind of interpreting the symptoms as a panic attack as opposed to like a health crisis. Yeah.
And sorry, you may have addressed this, but so panic attack, anxiety attack, are they kind of interchangeable in terms of what we're talking about?
I think a lot of people use them interchangeably. Like for myself, I will differentiate, like when I'm working with clients, I'll differentiate a panic attack as like what I described as this like real intense surge, as a spike, and then it comes down, it's short-lived. people might talk about anxiety episodes, right, that last longer, but it's not, it can be really intense and unpleasant, but it's not the same as like the hyperventilating or this kind of thing. I think it also depends on each person, right? How they experience their symptoms and how they come and go and what triggers it. It's
for sure. Yeah. Cause we're like not like anyone who's dealt with anxiety. It is very individual. It's very subjective. Like one person is going to feel anxious about one thing that might not bother another person.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think in counseling, I think that's really important for people to know that we really take an individual look at you and your anxiety, what might be triggering it, because you're a unique person who has your own physiology and your own set of worries. You're going to experience it in a way that's unique to you. And so that's important for us to kind of talk with you about.
Yeah. Can worry turn into anxiety?
So here's the thing, is that not all worry is accompanied by high anxiety, but anxiety usually has some kind of feature of worry.
Yeah.
So someone someone can be worried about something, but not necessarily be feeling that like emotional, physiological arousal about it. So like, let's say I'm worried about my finances in retirement or something. You know, it's on my mind. I'm kind of worried about, am I saving enough? But I'm not necessarily feeling this like distressing kind of anxiety feeling at this moment. Maybe I will at a different time. But right now I'm not. So I can sort of be grappling with some worry, but not necessarily feel overwhelmed with anxiety.
Yeah.
Whereas other times you can have a worry that is like a little bit more urgent or pressing, and it can really elicit a strong anxiety response.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, in my talks with you guys, you guys have explained that it's kind of cause for concern if these feelings and experiences are like, Joel uses a great kind of term. It's like if you want to check intensity, duration, and
frequency.
Yes. Yeah. So is that kind of the same thing? So with anxiety, I mean, like.
Yeah, for sure. Like if say panic attacks, if somebody is having frequent panic attacks, if it's like every day or at least once a week or something like that, right? Like that would be a kind of a sign of like a stronger anxiety experience that might warrant like, right, talking to a doctor about, talking to a counselor about. Intensity is that kind of like that, just that degree of unpleasantness that goes along with the symptoms.
Yeah. Is it just like you said, this low grade worry that comes up, or is it something that's bothering you every day?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And how long it lasts for, you said duration too, right? So one question that I'll sometimes ask people when it comes to worry is like, when it comes to this worry, like how effective do you feel at being able to put that worry on the shelf when it makes sense to do so? Like if you need to be focused on something else, like being with your kids or whatever, are you able to put your worry about the other thing on the shelf so that you can be present? And depending on how somebody answers that, just gives us some helpful information about how much it's bothering them.
Yeah. Yeah. And if someone's going through anxiety and not necessarily worry, and it is frequent, it's lasting a while, it's kind of intense, how would that show up? How would that impact their day-to-day? How would it impact relationships?
So sometimes anxiety can show up because there's like a known reason. Like someone might know like, oh, I'm feeling more anxious because my in-laws are coming to town. Yeah. Or I'm feeling more anxious because I've started a new job or something like that. So there's some things that are like kind of like,
you can pinpoint. That's the reason.
You can understand it. You can validate your experience of it. And there's things that you might do sort of at a physiological level to help yourself turn down the dial on the anxiety, to kind of like help relax the nervous system a little bit. But there's also sometimes anxiety shows up in someone's life and it's puzzling. Yeah. Someone is like, where the heck did this come from?
For sure.
Right? Why is this here? I'm not sure what triggered this, why this is here right now, what this is connected to. And that can be a very unsettling thing to not know. But for either of these things, whether you like know where it's coming from or you don't, it's great to talk through it with somebody, right? To try to figure out what it's about, and also just to talk about ways that you can kind of help yourself cope with those symptoms of anxiety, but maybe also understand it and make a plan for going forward. Yeah.
And what are some of those typical ways of coping with anxiety that you help clients with?
So there's physiological things that people do. Like sometimes there's just kind of lifestyle medicine kinds of things, right? People will just, and you, just like common sense, people will say, when I'm getting outside more, I feel less anxious. When I'm getting some exercise in, I feel less anxious. When I'm getting to yoga, when I'm doing some mindfulness exercises before bed, these kinds of things can just help kind of like calm the nervous system a little bit. I think intentionally too, we often are teaching people about different kinds of breathing exercises, different kinds of guided exercises kind of coming from mindfulness and meditation that help people focus on the body, relax the body, release tension, just kind of bring some awareness of the present moment that can also include some self-compassion and softness. So sometimes we'll do that at kind of the body level, but then there's all kinds of things that we do at the worry level, at the cognitive level, right? Where we kind of get into figuring out what somebody's worried about and how they might intervene with that worry or cope with that worry in a different way.
Yeah, so it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, hey?
It is.
Yeah. And Carmen, are there certain situations or life stages where worry might typically show up more for certain people?
So people can worry just across their lifespan. Again, it's part of a human experience. So at any age. So little kids might worry about, like, say, making friends or starting a new school. They can have anxiety and worries. Teens might worry about like school, academics, or like belonging in a social group. They can have worries about that. Adults obviously have like infinite number of things they might worry about. So it can just really show up any day, any time. But there's also just like some life moments where we might anticipate for more anxiety to come up. So when people are in times of transition or change, of course, that can bring up uncertainty and anxiety.
Because uncertainty is really kind of built into anxiety, hey?
Yeah. And so actually that was one of the things I wanted to share, that sometimes what I'll categorize for people things that sort of like trigger worry into sort of three types. So one type would be uncertainty and unpredictability. So for instance, like if your plane left late and you don't know if you're going to make your connecting flight, it introduces this level of like unpredictability, uncertainty. Am I going to get there on time? Then what am I going to have to go to a hotel, et cetera. So that unpredictability or uncertainty can naturally elicit some anxiety. Times of novelty. So when, say, there's a kid who's trying out a new sport or something and they don't know the game or the rules, it's new. So there's kind of like that uncertainty there of like not being sure about how to do the new thing and be good at it.
Yeah.
And then the other one is ambiguity. So like, let's say someone didn't laugh at a joke that you made and their response on their face is kind of ambiguous because you don't know what they're thinking. You might start worrying about what their face was saying or not saying, or what was going on in their mind. So sometimes knowing those triggers, so unpredictability and uncertainty, novelty, ambiguity, sometimes just kind of being able to like label what kind of trigger it is can help sort of normalize the experience of anxiety. Like, oh, no wonder I'm a bit anxious because their response was ambiguous.
Yeah.
We can kind of validate our own experience of it, which can be helpful.
Yeah, like those all kind of tie into like this idea of certainty. Like we want to know what's going on. We like to, we don't like to be confused or surprised or caught off guard. Yeah.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
And I think there's some folks who will say, like, in terms of tolerating that uncertainty and having some, picked up some wisdom along the way for how to kind of tolerate that or ways to think about it, cope with moments of uncertainty. There's things that people do. But then I think for just a lot of people and for a lot of reasons, like tolerating the uncertainty, it just elicits a lot of feelings of threat. It feels really risky. It's anxiety provoking.
I think what you said, though, of validating what you're going through, I mean, I know that was huge for me, kind of recognizing this certain thing is making me anxious. That's a normal response in this scenario. Yeah. And so it might not take the anxiety away, but it's like, this is okay that you're feeling this way. And it just made it so I didn't feel like I was weird or overreacting or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And I think when we're able to kind of like see it from that angle, then we can stop fighting against the anxiety. We can stop saying, well, I shouldn't feel this way. Yeah. Or you should be coping better, like putting ourselves down for having the anxiety in the first place. Like that just creates puts us in relationship with anxiety where we're like upset with ourselves or being hard with ourselves.
Totally.
But if we can understand and say, kind of makes sense that this is here for me in this life moment, we're kind of dropping the tug of war with the anxiety just to be like, you know what? Yeah, it's here. It's understandable.
Yeah. And like you guys have said this a lot before too, like emotions are information. So validating the feelings and then kind of figuring out, okay, what is this telling me? Yeah.
Totally. I think approaching it with some like curiosity and acceptance and just looking at it like, what is this moment or this anxiety telling me about what I need? That's pretty important information to decide what you want to do next.
What are some ways that you've seen people deal with anxiety or worked with clients on coping mechanisms that aren't so helpful?
I think, there's all kinds of different ways that people try to manage the symptoms, right? And manage their worry. Some of them, if you just put them on a spectrum, some of them might be more helpful for somebody, like solve a problem or address an issue, just look after themselves while they're going through it. They can be helpful. But then other things, I think, can sort of tip over into the unhelpful side. Particularly, I think, like, whenever there's uncertainty, there's an anxiety. And whenever there's anxiety, there tends to be sort of like often like a default to avoidance.
Yeah. Because it's uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So it makes sense that we want to avoid that uncomfortable feeling.
Exactly. We all just like instinctively want to brace against pain. And if like anxiety is like a kind of suffering or pain, of course we want like distance from it. So sometimes we just do things sort of instinctively or by default, but those things can sometimes get in the way of us doing the things that we want to do in our life, or get in the way of us kind of, as opposed to avoiding, approaching the kind of the feared situation or the anxiety provoking situation and trying out new ways to engage with it or cope with it. But I think also just the unpleasantness, right, of some of the symptoms of anxiety. People sometimes do things because they want to take the edge off that. Yeah. Right? If people are turning to substances or something to take the edge off the discomfort of the feelings. Yeah. Or as a way to dampen anxiety in certain situations, say like social situations. I think, it's probably something that a lot of people have tried, but it's one of those things where it's sort of, maybe there's some short-term effect there, but in the long term, it can also be unhelpful if somebody's relying on either like substances or some sort of avoidant-based coping.
Yeah, and like what I've learned through the years, it's easier to avoid, but the thing is, like, we're not going to stop being exposed to things that might make us anxious. So it's better to figure out how to deal with this thing and build the skills to handle it appropriately than just not deal with the uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah. And there's still going to be times where a person might decide in this moment it's going to be better for me to flee.
Yeah.
Like that is okay.
For sure.
And sometimes that is like the best way to stay safe or just the best choice in the moment. Like you think about like if somebody is being, really unkind or cruel, like you might just decide to leave because it's right. That makes sense. But there's other opportunities, I think, when somebody is overestimating the threat or the danger and they are coping by just kind of not approaching whatever it is. Yeah. So by taking the opportunity and the challenge to lean into it, you get to find out, okay, did the scary thing actually happen?
Right. Because that's a big thing with anxiety. We're like often predicting the future. Yeah.
Yeah. So if
it's not always right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if you approach something as opposed to avoid it, you get to find out what actually happens. But also, by putting yourself in the situation with that challenge, you could also get the opportunity to experience yourself doing it, which is a great confidence booster, like over time, right? You start to feel competent. Like, I can do this. It was hard and I did manage it.
It gives you evidence in the future. Like, hey, I have all these times that I can look back on and be like, yeah, this was scary or hard, but I did it.
And there's this equation that sometimes people talk about when it comes to anxiety, that anxiety is the overestimation of threat or danger divided by the underestimation of our ability to cope.
Yeah.
So if you avoid, you don't get to check out actually if your estimation of the threat or danger is accurate, and you don't get an opportunity to kind of practice coping or see what you can do, right? So it really kind of gets in the way. And in counseling, we just try to help people find ways to like reevaluate or reassess the level of danger or threat sometimes.
Yeah.
But also have things that they can do to boost up that feeling of competence and confidence to like feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Book title, David Burns. Yeah.
Yeah, that idea of like, or being brave or courageous isn't the absence of fear. It's
Exactly.
feeling it and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When there's a good reason to. You know, when you don't want to miss out on something that's important to you, or like, you know, you're standing up for something that's important and it's worth feeling the anxiety anyways. You know, those are a good motivator, I think.
How do you work with kids around this idea? Like, I've definitely experienced situations with my stepson over the years where he's been a bit anxious about certain situations, and it's different trying to explain these concepts to a kid, you know. He definitely, like, what is that term where you're trying to like predict the future and
Like catastrophizing or
just
jumping to
thinking
conclusions.
thinking of the worst case scenario. Like, I'm thinking right now he's in the 9th grade and he's, you know, about to go into high school, and he's thinking about classes next year, and he's like, he really gets in his head and thinks about like, oh, I can't take this advanced science class. Like, what if I fail? You know, and it's like
Classic what ifs.
yeah.
What
Oh,
ifs.
yeah. Yeah. I can totally relate, but it's like, how do you work with them to break that down and kind of have them realize that it is just a worried thought and not reality? Or maybe, I don't know if not reality is the right term. But
I mean, I think there's different ways that as counselors we work with people generally, but with kids when it comes to anxiety. Like, one of the ways that I think sometimes lands well with kids, but also just a lot of people, is the idea of kind of like anxiety as a bit of like a bully, or like anxiety as a bully that sort of like pushes you around, tells you what to do, makes you feel afraid kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we kind of, by kind of framing it that way, it allows us to like see the anxiety as kind of this presence, but then we can
like there's some distance from it. It's not.
Yeah. But then it kind of then puts us into a position to ask about like, what are ways that you can be, that you're like courageous and brave in the face of this bully? What are the ways that you're already like kind of carrying on doing things that are important to you, even if the bully's yapping at you? Like that kind of thing. That can be sort of like tapping into what you mentioned before about the courage and the bravery. Like, that's huge, I think. But the what ifs, right? Everybody, right? That's what worries are, essentially.
Yeah.
What if this happens? What if then happens? And then it snowballs into this, and then the worst case scenario happens. What if, right?
Yeah, so, I do that all the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, again, this is what brains do.
Very human.
Yep, exactly. So for that, and again, this isn't just for kids, I think in general, a way to sort of flip that is 2 questions with you're hearing a lot of what ifs. The first question is what else? What else might happen if you take that advanced science class?
Yeah.
What might be a positive outcome? What might be a best case scenario?
Yeah.
What might be a neutral case scenario? Right? By asking what else, it kind of opens up the mind to other possibilities that's not just worst case scenario. I'm going to flunk it. I'm going to be the worst person in the class. I'm not going to be able to keep up. And then I'm going to fail high school, you know, like that.
The snowball, for sure.
So just asking what else is possible that could happen, because we just don't know yet. You're not in high school yet. So sometimes that can be useful. The other one besides what else is what then? So it would be like, okay, let's say you got into the advanced science class and we did realize like it was pretty advanced and you were struggling. How could we problem solve around that together? What then would we do if we kind of caught that early? What would be some options, right? And so then you kind of help the kid in this case come up with ideas. Well, maybe you can get extra help from the teacher. You can get a tutor. Maybe we would decide to go into the regular stream science class, right? So the what then question kind of puts you in a position to be like, how would we cope if it is hard?
Yeah.
And let's just focus on the plan, but not let the fear get in the way of trying something and shooting for it, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm taking all these tips home for sure. But yeah, like when he talks like that, I see bits of myself, because I've dealt with those thoughts for years. What if, like, I need to prepare for the worst case scenario. Like, I need to think of every possible scenario and how I would handle it, just so I'm prepared and I'm not going to be caught off guard. And
sometimes we overdo it.
Yeah.
So if you think about somebody imagining all the potential outcomes of something, all the potential scenarios, and then for each one of those scenarios, somebody has a detailed plan of what to do. It's that's when I was saying before, sometimes we overdo it.
Yeah.
Right? That's when obviously like worry and the ways that we're coping start to have a negative effect on our functioning, how we feel about ourselves, our energy level, how we're feeling physically. So yeah, it's a good one to be paying attention to when we're overdoing it.
So how would we know, like what sign should we look out to know that it might be a good time to get help?
I think, obviously you might just have a sense of like, I got a lot of worries on my mind. Yeah. Right. And you might know like where it's coming from, and you just kind of have a sense of like, right now I'm worrying more, I have more anxiety in my life. So that might just tell you, give yourself the sense, I'm going to go talk to somebody, or I'm going to talk to my doctor or whatever. But I think other times people might notice kind of like physical symptoms that they don't. Sometimes it's easy to dismiss as like not being related to anxiety, could be something else. So if like you go home later today and you have a headache or something, you might interpret that as like, well, I didn't drink enough water. And you might kind of dismiss that it might be connected to like the stress of the day or anxiety or something. Yeah. Similarly, like somebody's got a stomach ache, and for kids, right, a lot of times anxiety, that's what they'll say is like, I got a stomach ache, right? And it's that kind of like anticipatory dread feeling, like that's a common one. But for somebody, if they're interpreting the stomach ache as like, oh, maybe that sandwich I had at lunch was bad, they might not be connecting it to like, well, maybe there was something stressful in my day, that caused me to worry, that caused some anxiety.
And I think that shows that it is like important to check in with the doctor sometimes about these things. Because, like physical symptoms, they can mean so many different things. Yeah, like a doctor can kind of help you figure out what that might be. And then potentially, if it is anxiety, direct you to counseling. Yeah.
That's right. I think it's always a good idea. Just like we say, go to the doctor for kind of a checkup. Yeah. It can be good to do that too with a counselor. Because there's also other signs or symptoms that might be connected to like kind of carrying a lot of worry and anxiety. So like if somebody's not sleeping well, that's a huge one, right? They're like having trouble kind of winding down at night, or they wake up in the middle of the night with worries, right? That can be an indicator that it's bothering them in a more kind of pronounced way. Yeah, like I said, like headaches. Yeah, just kind of feeling really tired. Like if somebody is putting in all of that extra energy into trying to plan, trying to control, trying to manage, and it's a little over the top, right? Somebody might be feeling just like exhausted.
Yeah, it can be so draining.
Yeah, in a mental and a physical way, just like being so depleted from all that effort.
Yeah, we've talked about uncertainty and the unknown. How does that kind of fuel worry and anxiety, and why is it so uncomfortable to kind of sit with that uncertainty?
It's really the idea of intolerance of uncertainty is really at the heart of worry and anxiety. I think worry in particular. When that's there, this like uncertainty theme, and we're having a hard time tolerating it, it just floods in all kinds of stuff for us. And I think when there is uncertainty, it's just there's this reminder that there's actually just so much in the world that's beyond our direct control. Yeah. And I think you mentioned that. Like there's so many factors involved and influences that can impact an outcome. And I think in just day-to-day life, we're often like confronted with the reality about like how our own power and influence to control things is actually limited. Yeah. And that is distressing sometimes, right? We can feel really powerless and really helpless. It just feels awful because normally like people tend to feel more more well or just feel good about things, if they feel like they have a sense of agency, if they know they have choices and they can effectively do things to get the outcome they want, right? Like
For sure.
it just feels
like if I
more
know,
empowering.
yeah, like, oh, if I'm worried about, I don't know, like you brought up the example of finances and retirement, it feels like that feels a bit more in one's control. Like, okay, here's the plan.
Right.
This is the money I'm going to put aside. This is how I'm going to manage spending. These are the choices that I can make to help with that worry. It's the actions I can take. But there's so many things, especially now in 2026, that are going on around us that we don't have control over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think about young people starting off, right? And just like employment issues and, affordability of housing, rent, whether it's to rent or buy.
And I know there is that saying, like, focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. But that is easier said than done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. It's definitely easier said than done. And I think I've recently come across this like different tool. So there's that like things in your control, things not within your control.
Yeah.
Make a list. Why are we spending so much time focusing on things happening, not that we don't have any control over? But there's another one that talks about sort of like a middle sphere of control, which is a sphere of influence. So we might not have direct control over the property tax increase going up or something, but maybe we have some influence. I can write my city councilor. I can appeal things, right? Like there's some influence that I can try. And sometimes like someone might say, well, that's what's within our control. But I'm also kind of doing those things not expecting that I necessarily will get the outcome that I want. But it's a sphere of influence.
Yeah, and
right?
it's taking action, right? It's doing something.
It's doing something. Yeah. So we often just kind of feel better when we're able to do something about it. But it's also just a reality that there's things that we didn't plan for. There's things that we just can't anticipate coming up that introduces all kinds of uncertainty into our world. And I think, like I was saying, I think there's different kinds of pieces of wisdom that people rely on or pick up, around kind of dealing with that. But I also just know like uncertainty can just be very threatening to, right? Like just like when there's so much out of our control, it really brings up a lot of threat and risk for people. And I think, especially for people who may have experienced some kind of uncertainty or chaos or lack of control in their earlier life, it might make them kind of have a greater sensitivity to uncertainty in adulthood, because it kind of brings up the same feelings of threat or fear or this urgency to try to manage things. So I think that's important for people to kind of be thinking about too, in terms of like some people will describe themselves as like, I've always been a worrywart, right? I've always been trying to like manage things and control things. And it goes back to time I was a kid and like different kinds of childhood experiences sometimes. And I think sometimes it's helpful to kind of connect those dots a little bit, just to kind of look at where it's come from.
It gives you a better understanding of why you respond to things the way you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, is it just a matter of practicing being okay? Like just kind of sitting with the uncertainty? Like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but when it happens, I'll handle it, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there is a certain benefit to like intentionally picking your moment, but to practice sitting with uncertainty and maybe like not overdoing it with the trying to manage and trying to control. Like give yourself the challenge of like kind of accepting what may come kind of thing. And just, and also maybe like focusing on ways that you can calm your own nervous system, support those around you, right? Like I think sometimes in some moments, practicing that makes a lot of sense, validating why it's hard, right? Kind of coming at it from sort of more of a compassionate, validating perspective rather than a fix it now one.
Yeah.
We need flexibility to do all of these things. There's going to be times where it's going to be better to take some kind of action. And then there's going to be times where it's better to slow down.
Yeah.
Look after ourselves, look after other people around us.
Yeah. And speaking of looking after others, what's what can we do when we know that someone we care about is kind of dealing with anxiety?
So because it's human, everyone will be faced with different kinds of anxiety and worry from time to time. And even if let's say you have a loved one who's doing this, overestimating the risk of something or the danger of something and underestimating their ability to cope. Even if you are not estimating the risk level to the same degree that they are, your stepson, for instance, you might be thinking it's going to be fine, right? So we might not be estimating the same level of risk, but we can still validate their feelings. We might not have to totally agree with someone's perspective, just to still validate and have compassion about just the feeling part of the anxiety.
Yeah, we don't want to tell them that they're overreacting.
No,
that
absolutely.
never helps. Yeah, calm down.
Exactly. And even if you don't understand where their anxiety is coming from, or if they're even having a puzzling experience of it and you're both kind of puzzled, even if you can't figure out what has triggered it, you can still, again, tend to their feelings about it in a kind of an emotional, physical way, and just ask them what they need from you in the moment as a support person. And the other thing I'll just say is, if you have an idea, sometimes people might come to you about I'm dealing with this issue, it's causing me a lot of stress and anxiety. You might have an idea of a way to shift a perspective or a way to approach a problem. It's just still generally a good rule of thumb to ask them if they would like to hear your ideas at that moment,
right,
or if they need some other kind of different support from you in the moment.
Yeah.
So again, asking for what they need. You can say, I have an idea, but what do you, how can I help you right now? Because otherwise, people don't want to have advice necessarily forced on them.
Yeah. If listeners take away one message today about worry, anxiety, the difference between the two, how to kind of cope with them, what do you hope that takeaway is?
I would say if there's a lot on your mind, or if there's just kind of a diffuse sense of unease or anxiety, this feeling on edge, feeling nervous, vigilant, it's just in a human way, it's just helpful to talk it through with somebody, whether that's a counselor or a doctor, someone that you trust. And it might be worries in your mind, or a physical or emotional feeling of anxiety. I would say it's what we were mentioning before. Just try to bring kind of a curiosity in a way that's maybe kind and compassionate to yourself. Because I really think that's often better than, I think a lot of times that people end up being really hard on themselves for having anxiety. And that just kind of sometimes makes it more painful.
For sure. Worse. Yeah.
So if there's a way we can kind of bring a validation, a compassion, a curiosity towards it,
rather than judgment,
we might be able to better kind of soften the experience of it generally, but also help ourselves figure out, where is this coming from, and what is the anxiety kind of telling me at this moment, or what do I need at the moment. So I would say for people to kind of keep that in mind, and it just helps to not just keep it inside, talk to somebody about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
My
Definitely
pleasure.
helped me understand anxiety a bit better today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Living Fully, a Calgary Counseling Centre podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This episode was produced by Nick Here, Louisa Campos, Manuel Montano, Jenna Forbes, and by me, Catherine Hertig. A special thanks to Carmen Sadoway. Tune in on April 21st for our next episode. We'll be talking about AI and mental health. It's a lot more nuanced than just, hey, this tool is here whenever I need it.
And maybe that's the important thing to know. It is a tool. So it's really like any other tool. It's not good or bad. It's how you use it. That's what makes it, the context. A screwdriver is a really good tool, and there are good ways and bad ways to use it. A phone is a really good tool, and there are good ways and bad ways to use it. I think it's how we use them. That's what's important.
To stay up to date on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe. We're available in your favorite podcast app. Living Fully is a production of Calgary Counseling Centre and recorded in Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. Living Fully podcast is not a substitute or alternative for professional care or treatment. Calgary Counseling Centre and Counseling Alberta provide effective counseling to anyone in Alberta with no waitlist and no financial barriers. Find us online at calgarycounseling.com and counselingalberta.com. For help across Canada and the United States, call 211. If you are outside of Canada and the US, seek help from your general medical practitioner.